guys, it's Saturday, April 12th, I think. Just driving as usual. Haven't filmed much. I'm sorry about that, guys. Just haven't had anything worth posting. Haven't really felt like vlogging too much, to tell the truth. Decided to vlog today. Dr. Jacob Wilson wrote an article about bulking, whether or not it's necessary. It kind of prompted this vlog I'm going to post here. And what he said in the article, and by the way, none of my vlogs are original. All my ideas are from somebody else. I'm not sure that there's a such thing as original thought anymore. Anyway, what he basically says is that protein intake and training intensity are the main things you want to think about in your off-season or your mass gaining, strength gaining phase. And he actually has a recent study that he's done, and it's in well-trained subjects, which is rare. Normally studies like this are in sedentary people, and those really aren't relevant to bodybuilders and powerlifters who have been training for a while. So that was cool. And they actually ate at maintenance calories and saw very little change in their weight, but their muscle mass went up, muscle mass went down. It was a pretty small control group, and it's just one study, but it's still interesting. But again, what he says is optimal. What he says is most important for mass gain, strength gain, is protein intake. And he says, and has evidence for focusing more on protein intake per meal than total protein intake. So he recommends 30 to 40 grams of high quality protein per meal, and doesn't really have any recommendations for total protein intake, at least not in this article. But I will say that consuming 10 grams of protein 20 times a day probably isn't going to be optimal, because you're never going to maximize protein synthesis. And it takes 30 to 40 grams of most protein sources to get the optimal dose of leucine, which will result in that maximized protein synthesis, maximized muscle protein synthesis. But again, when it comes to training intensity, I think that carbs play a very large role, and I think that eating in excess and getting a lot of extra carbs can definitely benefit most people, not just for the physical benefits, but for the mental benefits, especially for neurotic bodybuilders. I know that I think about food a lot right now. I've been dieting a while, but even in the off season, it's on my mind a little bit. So knowing that I have that cushion of calories is helpful. And there have been plenty of studies comparing slight overfeeding, eating 400 to 500 calories above maintenance, to upwards of 1,500, even up to 2,000 calories per day above maintenance. And most of the studies showed similar strength and mass gains in the slight overfeeding groups and the massive overfeeding groups. So I definitely don't recommend gaining a ton of fat in the off season, because that's really not going to benefit you. What I do recommend is close to that lower end, 400 to 500 calories. For me, I like to be lower than that, because when I get above maintenance, I tend to gain weight quickly, gain fat quickly. But like I mentioned before, as far as what we know, it is possible to recomp, to gain muscle and lose fat. It's just very difficult. So, like I said, I recommend 400 to 500 calories above maintenance per day, mostly from carbs. And I plan to experiment with doing fewer meals with maximum protein synthesis and not worrying so much about total protein intake, and maybe having more carbs on days like that, and having other days where there are more meals where I'm maximizing protein synthesis each time and possibly lowering calories so that calories are matched on both days. Hopefully that makes sense. I might put some annotations in these to describe that a little bit better. But anyway, I'll just close by saying, yeah, you want to maximize protein synthesis during the off season, and you want to maximize your training intensity. And I think extra carbs can definitely help you there. So 400 to 500 calories above maintenance, mostly from carbs. All right. I don't know if I'll even post this because I think it might have just been really confusing. I had it all written down, but now I'm in the car and I'm driving, so I can't really look at the notes I had. So I apologize for that if this does get posted. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And don't if you didn't. I'll talk to you next time.